Hi everyone, welcome to Random Thoughts with Alex. In this video I'm going to talk about how anyone can look up scientists, get a sense of what they've published and how impactful these publications were in the literature. It's a good way to measure a scientist's stature and influence. The occasion for doing so is because I've reached 5,000 citations myself, and I thought that's a good occasion to talk about citations in this video. So why citations? Well, when we publish papers, we usually start with a brief overview of what work has been done before us, and in doing so, we cite a number of papers that were influential to the work that we're currently doing. Also, when we're discussing our results, we usually compare with what other people have found, and then again, there's some occasion to cite other people's works. So if a work gets cited a lot, it indicates that that work has been very influential. That can be in a positive way or a negative way, but it clearly has had a lot of influence on the scientific literature. So counting citations is a good way to measure the scientist, for better or for worse. So we use a tool that is part of the Google ecosystem, and that is Google Scholar. So you can simply look for that by Googling Google Scholar, and that's the first thing that comes up. And when you open Google Scholar, you get this opening screen where, if you've used it before, it will recommend some articles, and if you want to search a certain topic, you can look for that topic in the search bar. So let's try that. Just let's try a random scientific topic, biodegradation. There you go. It works just like any Google search really, but it's searched specifically in the academic literature or the scientific literature, and it will try to put highly cited work and recent work at the top of the list. So you can refine your search, say we only want to know work that has been published this year. There you go. It will recommend other terms. For instance, if you want to know fungal biodegradation, there you go. Or you can search for scientists. So that's what I would like to do here. Let's start with one of the most famous scientists, Albert Einstein. So you can go through the articles that are either about Albert Einstein or that were written by Albert Einstein. And when the paper is available online for free, it will give you a link to the PDF file. If not, it will try to find a link where you can find a paper. For instance, yeah, I'm not getting a good example of that. Of course, most of Einstein's work is publicly available, but if we go click on one of the papers, it takes you to a place where the paper is available behind a paywall. So usually when there's no link available here, you can still get to the work, but it will be behind a paywall. Of course, most of Einstein's publications are very old, so they're no longer copyrighted, and so people have put them online for free. Now, if we go back to the first page, in addition to searching for papers, this is going to take a while. Let me just do the search again. There we go. In many cases, there is a profile available, so you can search specifically for the author, and then you get a page like this. It gives you a neat overview of the papers published by a particular person. Normally, as a scientist, you have to kind of sign up for that. and then once you signed up, it automatically keeps track of your new papers that are being published. Obviously, Albert Einstein didn't sign up for this because he died in 1955, I believe, long before Google existed. So somebody did that for him. You can see Einstein has 187,000 citations on here. Now, most of these citations are recent ones. Back in Einstein's day, there were not a lot of scientists, so there were not a lot of opportunities to get citations from others. And you can even see that even from this list starts in 1986. From 1986 to today, the number of citations per year has increased tremendously. That's simply because there are more scientists today than there were in 1986. And if you go back further in time, that will be even more pronounced. So 187, actually Albert Einstein's influence is much bigger than suggested by this number 187. Obviously, he's one of the most influential scientists in history. So let's look for some people that are more recent. Let me look up Carl Sagan. He's well known as a science popularizer, but he was actually a very prolific scientist in his own right. Obviously, when you look him up, a lot of the early publications that come up are his books, like Cosmos, for instance, and The Demon Haunted World. But you can see, regardless, his scientific impact is very large, with 40,000 citations in the scientific literature. And when you look, many of these are actual papers. They're not popular science, like a paper in Science about an encounter with Saturn, Jupiter system, and so on. Another nature paper about tholins. So clearly Carl Sagan was a very established scientist. So how will you put that in perspective? First of all, before I put that in perspective, let's look at some of the other data that are given here on the list. The H index, which is 88 in the case of Carl Sagan, and was about twice as big in the case of Albert Einstein, that indicates that Carl Sagan had published 88 papers that have been cited at least 88 times each. It's a convenient way to get a sense of how broad is somebody's impact, because yes, Carl Sagan has 40,000 citations, but as I mentioned, Cosmos is a very popular book which got 2,500 citations. The Demon Haunted World, also a popular science book, got almost 3,000 citations. So a large number of citations are concentrated in a small number of works. So sometimes that can make someone look more impactful than they really are if their impact is very narrow. So this H index gives you a sense of the broadness of somebody's impact. So 88 is very high for by any measure. The I-10 index is the number of papers that were cited at least 10 times. And that's actually also a good metric, because we all publish a lot of things. Some things are successful, some things are not so successful. A lot of the things we publish sometimes not in real journals, like sometimes when we present at a conference, they make a little book with summaries of these presentations. These books of abstracts often show up in Google Scholar, but they're not really very impactful. They're only interesting for the people who attended that presentation, which is usually a very small group. So to get a sense of what are the real impact, how many real impactful papers has somebody published, the I-10 index gives you that, because once a paper has been cited 10 times, you can say, okay, there is at least some impact that is coming from this paper. So 284 again is a very high number. Now, to get a sense of what is how strong is a world leader in their field, let's take the example of Nobel Prize winners. So for 2025 we had 9 Nobel Prize winners in either physics or chemistry or medicine. Of these, 5 have a profile like this. The other 4 never registered to have their profile maintained on Google Scholar. So of those 5, the average citation index, as we call it, number of citations, is about 130,000. So to give you a sense, I am going to just pick a typical one from this year's batch of Nobel Prize winners. That is Shimon Sakaguchi. He won the Nobel Prize for Medicine for his work on immunology. So there we go. So 143,000 citations. That's almost as many as Einstein had in the previous screen. 136 is the H index. So he has published 136 papers that were cited at least 136 times, and an I-10 index of 325. So he's published very widely. Has a lot of papers that were cited very well. Overall 143, and that's a typical performance of a Nobel Prize winner. Now, some people get even more than that, even people who have not won the Nobel Prize. And as far as I'm aware, the person who is the most cited person in the world currently is this guy, Yoshua Bengio. Let's look him up. Yoshua Bengio. He is one of the main pioneers in artificial intelligence, and of course that's a very popular discipline these days, and that's why he's been cited so many times. And he recently broke the 1 million barrier, so that's the only person that I'm aware of who has been cited 1 million times. His H index is 251 and his I-10 index is 981. Almost 1,000 papers that were published were cited 10 times. 250 papers that were cited at least 250 times. His most cited papers have about 100,000 citations each. Very impressive. He happens to be in the city where I live, in Montreal. He's from the University of Montreal, the Mila Center, which is a prestigious artificial intelligence research center. Okay. So it can be useful to use this to get a sense of how reputable are some scientists. Sometimes you see scientists in the news and then you might want to ask yourself, okay, these people are giving their opinions, but how reputable are these people? So to give you an example, we have seen Anthony Fauci on TV many times during the photos. Oh, what did I make of? Okay. Very bizarre. When I looked this up just a few days ago, he was definitely on the list. Oh, there we are. No. Oh, NIH, yes. There we go. I don't know why that didn't come up. He's now indicated as AS Fauci. So Anthony Fauci has been cited almost 270,000 times. So that's more than the average Nobel Prize winner, even though he has not won the Nobel Prize. H-index 240, more than 1,000 papers cited at least 10 times. So there's no doubt about it that Anthony Fauci is a very respected scientist in his field, one of the most cited in the world. So that doesn't mean that what he says is correct. I but it does indicate that he is a very respected researcher in his field. He was the director of the National Institutes of Health for a reason. Now, after the Biden administration ended and was replaced by the Trump administration, Anthony Fauci was replaced by Jay Bhattacharya. So let's look him up. Jay Bhattacharya, who's in Stanford University, he got 18,000 citations, an H-index of 71, and an I-10 index of 175. Now you could say, okay, that's more than a factor 10 less than Anthony Fauci. However, 18,000 is still very high. Remember, Carl Sagan, who is world famous, had 40,000, so that's almost half as many as Carl Sagan. So, although his impact is a lot less than that of Anthony Fauci, he's still a very respected researcher in his own right. So, we can't really say that Anthony Fauci was replaced by a dummy. Absolutely not. He's a very respected researcher, very different opinions than Anthony Fauci, but just from looking at the specs, the numbers, you have to say that these are two very respected scientists who just disagree with each other very profoundly on everything related to COVID. Okay, a scientist who has been in the news a lot and that has been criticized for that also is Avi Loeb. And I see Avi Loeb, Abraham Loeb, as a modern day Carl Sagan. I've read some of his work. It really stands out. I think it is of exceptionally high quality. Just like Carl Sagan's paper, I've read one of them. For its days, that was a paper from the 1980s. It was way ahead of its time, very visionary. And I see some parallels between the work that Abraham Loeb does and what the work that Carl Sagan was doing. Carl Sagan was often not really appreciated for the work that he did because his popularization in topics that some people found a little cringy, maybe talking about planetary science, about aliens, and so on. People didn't like that, and so people think less of him because of that. But Carl Sagan is very respected and should be considered a very respected researcher, and so does Avi Loeb. Avi Loeb has been cited 65,000 times. His H-index is 133 and his I-10 index is 630. Again, very respected scientist. So it kind of bothers me when people like Dave Farina, also known as Professor Dave, and Anton Petrov, known from the What the Math YouTube channel, criticize him and say that what he's doing is not really scientific. We are talking about one of the most established scientists in his field, saying that what he does is not scientific. Well, that's obviously not true. Neither Professor Dave nor Anton Petrov are on here, by the way. They don't have done graduate studies in science. They've done a master in science education. The bachelor is in a scientific discipline, but not their master. They did not get a Ph.D. either. Now, that doesn't mean that they're wrong, but it does show that they don't really have the insights in how science operates that Avi Loeb would have. You make of that what you will. This just because Avi Loeb is more established doesn't mean that he's right and the others are wrong. Obviously, everybody should make up their own mind about that. But this could give you some context to say, okay, this is not some loony who's saying weird stuff. No, this is somebody who really thought deeply about the topics that he talks about in his books and in his social media interactions. Okay, talking about YouTube and social media, let's look up some YouTubers, the ones that are real scientists, and I'm going to start with Sabine Hossenfelder. Sabine Hossenfelder has been cited over 6,000 times. It's about 1,000 more than me. Her H index is 37, mine is 33. Her I-10 index is 75, mine is 57, I believe. Yes, 57. So, although her career, her scientific career, was shorter than mine, I have been writing papers for 30 years, she has actually a higher impact than I do. And probably for good reason, I think. She's done some very creative, very original work. Her most cited paper has been cited more than 1,000 times. So again, people like Professor Dave like to criticize Sabine Hossenfelder in some very insulting ways. But Sabine is the real scientist, not Professor Dave. I think she deserves respect for what she's doing. People may disagree with her, but what she says is based on very extensive experience with publishing papers and producing science. Another person who can be a little controversial sometimes would be Thunderfoot. His real name is Philip Mason. Let's see, there's lots of Philip Masons. It's a very common British name, so let's use the one. As you can see, that's the guy. Philip Mason. He works in the Czech Republic at a scientific research institute. His impact is almost exactly the same as that of Sabine Hossenfelder, so it's about 1,000 more than mine. Again, he's younger than me, not much, but not by much, but he's definitely younger than me, and yet has accomplished more, has gathered more impact than I have. So definitely a real scientist who knows how science works. I don't always agree with him on things, but I do respect him as a scientist because he's proven his merit there. Another one, quite a famous YouTuber, would be Sean Carroll. There he is. You might recognize him from his YouTube channel. 37,000 citations, that's impressive. That's really a lot. So among the typical YouTubers, I'd say he's probably the most cited. There's a lot of people that actually don't have a profile. Like I looked up some of the people on Numberphile. Numberphile has is a mathematics YouTube channel which brings in real mathematicians, real academics who do mathematics works for a living. So let's start with the most scientifically reputable one, John Conway. He died a couple of years ago during the COVID episode. He does not have a profile, so when that happens we will have to go to articles and just look at the articles individually to get a sense of his work. On Numbers and Games, John Conway, 2000 citations. The Game of Life, that's what he's most famous for, is this it's not a game really, it's a simulation of self-replicating patterns which look like life. His work on that is been cited more than 2,400 times and so on. So you can see lots and lots of citations, many papers that have been cited many thousands of times. In mathematics, it's not easy to get cited in mathematics. It's a field where progress can be very slow sometimes. Another very famous mathematician or mathematical physicist is Edward Frenkel. So he has done a lot of work on the mathematical underpinnings of theoretical physics. So lectures on the Langlands program and conformal field theory, 300 citations, a book that has been cited over 1,000 times, and so on. Clearly, when you look at all again, so this time is not many thousands of paper of citations for a large number of papers, but many hundred times cited for many papers. So not as reputable as John Conway, but still exceptionally high impact for a mathematician. And so on. I couldn't find Matt Parker at all because there are some other Matt Parkers whose papers show up first. And if I went and dug really deeply into Google Scholar, I would probably find some of Matt Parker's work. If that is, if he actually published, he's not actually a an academic in the sense that he researches and writes his own papers. He's more like a science popularizes. He is a link to universities though. And there you have it. It gives you a pretty good idea on what uh, to expect when you look up researchers. You can, when you hear about a researcher, you can just go to Google Scholar, look them up, and get a sense of what they've done and how successful, how reputable that work is that they've accomplished. I hope you find this video interesting. If you do, please like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.